back on saws for just a little bit. This is an interesting saw to me. I'm not sure if anyone will recognize what it is, but it's kind of interesting the wear pattern it has, I think. And we've seen that pattern elsewhere. So I was hired to effectively put on a cylinder. Here's a HyWay cylinder. And by the way, I did check this particular cylinder to see if it was square, and it is. It's not a bad looking part. Now what this saw is, I'm not a Stihl person, so I'm kind of learning as I go along with these particular saws. This saw reminds me an awful lot of a 576 Husqvarna, where it's beginning to get into the more advanced technologies. See how it's got those transfer ports wrapped around underneath the exhaust? They're longer, and you're beginning to see that show up in this saw here for Stihl. Of course, Husky had had it for quite some time. And it's a rugged saw. I'm not sure I quite understand what that thing is for. You know, a Stihl person is going to have to explain that one to me. Well, I flushed the bottom end out and put a little bit of oil in there. But where I was going with this is there's absolutely no doubt that when you look at the OEM parts, that they are quite a bit better than the aftermarket parts that we've been working with for, I don't know, a couple of years here. Not in the same league. But the other thing I notice here is if you're used to working on those aftermarket like 660s and saws like that, this one here is not that unfamiliar. This one has a lot of the same basic layout and configuration, you know. So lessons learned with those saws are definitely translated over to these. So from that perspective, that was a learning experience that was good for me. And I see this one here has got the plastic flywheel. That's supposed to be a little bit lighter. I'm not sure it is, but that's what's been told to me. And the basic order of events to pull this apart are the same as the 660s are as well. You know? And since I happen to like the way the 660s are put together, guess what? I think I like these too. And seeing as this one here has got a carburetor that can be adjusted, see that right there? It's a carburetor. It doesn't have any electronics. So that's what I did, is I hit it with a blowtorch and then wound it out with a pair of vice grips. One thing I like about this whole series of saw is the inboard clutch with the sprocket out here as compared with the outboard clutch with a sprocket on the inside. Now I understand there's all kinds of ergonomic reasons of one versus the other, plus keeping the heat away from the cases and all that stuff, but I'd much rather have that. I'll deal with the extra heat on the saw. If it's designed properly, you should be able to handle it anyway, you know. But just changing bars and chains and stuff like that with this configuration, it's just a lot easier to deal with. 372s are that way too, by the way. It's not a bad day actually, and I finished up one of those saws, the 461 Stihl, and pretty much used up that test log on those aftermarket builds. I've got one just like it over there. And that one there, the whole end is raised. So I think we're just going to carry some saws over there and warm them up and break them in and get a ballpark and see how one runs relative to the next. What I brought out today was Devil with a Blue Dress On saw. And that's a HyWay top end on the OEM bottom end 372. And there's a HyWay top end on a Stihl MS461 OEM bottom end. Everything else is all Stihl. I think that's a nice saw. So we'll just see how they run. You know, the chains are okay, nothing great. Neither one of these chains are fresh because you've seen them before, and that one isn't that fresh either. I'd say they're roughly the same in terms of wear, but as I keep saying over and over and over, this is a ballpark thing, and very simply just a bar and chain can tip the scales from one saw to the other. So this is more just an idea of orders of magnitude, how one runs relative to the next. You don't have to depend more on my sense of feel than you will on the actual times. Yeah, I'd say that made a difference. Now we're getting into harder wood too, so it's a better comparison between the two saws. Let's try this one now. Still feels better, but the one thing I did notice is if you look at the chips, the chain on the Stihl is definitely better than the one on the blue saw. So there's a factor there, but I don't care how you look at it, both those saws are strong. They run good. Now there was one more thing that I was testing in that video. They may come out looking a little bit odd, but I don't care. I'll have to bring it up to the camera so you can see. This is made by Cobra. You know, I've been having trouble with the Husqvarna clips. And this is quite a bit more rugged. I tried to peel up my sweatshirt so it would see it, so I could see if it was getting yanked on. You know, testing all things gear, right? I don't know if you can see that. I like it. It didn't come apart. We'll see how long it lasts. And the other thing we did was we chopped off some of the bottom. You know, they were just a little bit too long. So, tested all gear, not just the saws. But the big disappointment to me was that saw right there. The ignition failed. But you know something? It's one of those aftermarket ignitions you get on eBay, and I have yet to have one last very long, so I guess there's no surprise that it didn't survive. I don't know if I have enough daylight. I'd like to see if I can get back and swap out that ignition and see if I can get a run on that saw. That 461 was a nice running saw. You know, again, it's got a new top end on it, HyWay, so it's not true OEM, but if it's an indication of what they run like, I want one. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but bottom line is that was a sweet saw. Talk to you later. Bye for now. This is one of those rare times where I have to go back and reinvent the whole wheel, because I already shot the whole video and it was one of those things where nothing worked out the way I expected. One is I'm testing a new buckle for my chaps, and I just never did like the ones that came with the Husqvarna. They were junk. They finally broke, and my wife came up with a concept using these things that you see on tactical belts. And it works pretty good. So my first attempt was I kind of pulled my sweatshirt up to see if I could show that. It just looked freaking stupid. Maybe I'll show some of that in there. And then this saw here wouldn't start simply because the ignition system failed. It was one of those cheap eBay Chinese ignition systems for 372s, and it just failed. Now, that saw ran beautifully. That's a 461 Stihl. This one here, the chain was pretty dull, but it still ran pretty nice. Started easy. And I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right back down to the same log and see if I can't. I'm going to go down to the same log and see if I can't reshoot that video. And maybe I'll put some of the other video back in there so you can see how goofy it really was. Anyway, I have to reshoot all this. I was out here before, as you can see, which means all three of those saws got some more run time. In particular, that 461 got some more break-in time. That thing ran strong. But for a variety of reasons, I'm not going to put that video up. And that one failed. The cheap Chinese ignition system that was on it failed. So I had to put another ignition on it. We'll see how long that one lasts. That thing ran beautifully, like I said. That one ran okay. The chain's got a little time on it, so it suffers because of the chain. And I was trying to show my new buckle for my chaps, because I don't like those Husqvarna buckles they have. They just break. They're junk. And two things I did on the chaps was my wife was gracious enough to cut them a little bit shorter and to engineer a solution for that buckle. And I think I'll fold in some pictures of that. I'm just going to let the camera run. I'm going to fire up all these free saws, and so you'll see them fired up cold, shut them off, and then fire them up one at a time and take a test cut, take 3 cuts. So here goes. First is there's the buckle.
That runs pretty good, right? That saw right there runs strong. This saw is strong too, but it's got a dull chain. I don't know how to say this, but if all those saws had the same chain, I can't tell you which one would be faster. I'm going to guess that one, followed by the 461 on this smaller wood. And the big one just doesn't have the RPMs that these two have. But I really don't know what to tell you. They all, look at these chips. I mean, that chain there has got the most use of all the chains in this whole mix. And I had to really push on it in order to make it cut. Yet that still felt pretty fast to me. And I would pick, for my own use, I would pick either this one or the 461 just simply because they're lighter. You know, I'll have to go to the video editor to figure out which one actually cut the fastest. I really can't tell you. The clasp stayed together on the chaps. That was a move in the right direction, so at least we've moved forward. I like that 461. I don't know how to say this. I'm not supposed to, but it was actually a toss-up between the 461 and the 372 as to which one was smoother. It might be a little bit heavier, but not much. Of course, both those saws have HyWay top ends. And I think that's what's relevant in this whole thing, is you have two HyWay saws. That one, as it came out of the box, right? And that one, I had to trim the base to get it trued up and also to get a little bit better squish. That one there is smaller in displacement, right? By about 5 cc's. Sure didn't feel it though. They feel about the same. So I think between those two saws, it just depends on whether you like the white and orange or strictly orange for the color of your saw, so which one you like better. But I think the other thing that's going to show up here is you get a good running 461 or 372 that's really done right, and on that smaller wood, you know, it's what, 16, 18-inch wood? You don't gain anything with the extra displacement. You really don't. And what wins the day is which one can pull the higher RPMs more than anything else. Chain speed wins the day, not displacement. because all three of those saws can get you roughly the same chain speed with the same 7-tooth sprocket. Now let me get this up to the house and see if I can put together a quick little video. Boy, I'd like to get that little outboard running and have that in there too. That would just make it for me. So talk to you later. Bye for now.